So we're at 2 o'clock and it looks like we've gathered a nice small group. Would you like a formal introduction or would you like to do it?
Either way, I'm fine to just very quickly introduce myself and get started, and then any questions afterwards about who we are, they can definitely chime in and ask, but I don't need a personally don't need a formal introduction.
Likewise.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and launch them?
Perfect. Well, welcome to our session today. We're super excited. We have Chuck Carpenter's right over here to my right. He will be joining in. We're dividing this particular session into little sections. I'm presenting more of an administrative ed tech director side of things and just making some awareness happening around the responsible AI usage. And then he will funnel in even more closely to the ELA classroom. And so I'm going to try not to ramble because I definitely could talk all day long about this and have a full session. So I'm going to try to keep it concise. I have my contact information. My name is Mandy Liebeck, the Educational Technology Director for the District of Neosho. My email is there as well as my socials, although that's my Twitter handle and Instagram. I'm not on, well, X, whatever it's called now. Not really on there as much as I used to be, but please feel free to reach out and connect in any way possible. I'm happy to chat through any of this or other ed tech related items. So let's just dive in to our session here. Well, give me a second. Why are we not? There we go. So I think this graphic is just, it sums up our whole dilemma. We are past the tug of war that we have had over the last couple of years, where it's, whether or not AI should or shouldn't be in education, in classroom, exist at all. Like we're kind of past that, and we're at a pivotal moment where we just have to accept where this is reality and stop the debate and then figure out a shift towards action. And that action really starts with conversations of how we can best integrate AI into our schools, not only preparing our educators, pre-service and service teachers, for what that looks like from how do I use AI to work smarter and not harder to hopefully reduce burnout and stress and frustration, but also our students specifically, because they are now going into careers that will be influenced by that artificial intelligence piece. So with educators, we like to have, some of us, maybe not all of us, we like to have a very linear approach. Like our desire is point A to point B. We know exactly where we're going. We begin with the end in mind and we work towards that. And with this particular conversation, the bottom picture is much more of our reality. As things are developing, as things are changing, we're still getting a grasp on what AI in the classroom even looks like, or AI in schools look like. It's a windy road of twists and turns, and we are kind of, I don't want to say a lack of control, but a little bit. There's some things that we're still trying to determine. What does that look like for schools? What is appropriate? What is not appropriate? What is safe and secure for our students and our teachers? So unfortunately, it is one of those big entities within education that perhaps will not be as linear as we desire. I included a few clips here when Chuck and I were talking about how to divide this presentation. I have the lens from that ed tech side of things and being in some of the conversations with some of the different conferences I attend, that really the focus and the key topics that are coming up are all about artificial intelligence. And these are just a few of the clips I just saw and had pop up in a quick Google search. One being from April 24th to 24. So Stanford teams up with the Tech Interactive and Bay Area school leaders for an inaugural National AI Literacy Day. Speaking in the future tense, Stanford researchers help ASU and GSV grapple with artificial intelligence. So these are the conversations that big leaders from companies to CEOs to instructional leaders across the United States are having around artificial intelligence. And then we're just trying to figure out where do we land on that scale and realm. So along those lines, the current movement could range in a school district from zero discussions being had to AI board policy adoption and plans and all of the expectations laid out very explicitly. Depending upon what district you might be working in or what district you might be placed in, that can range. So my plea or my suggestion would make sure, especially pre-service teachers, going out into the district, find out what the AI policy is within your particular cooperating district. Currently for the Neosho School District, I am, and as of May, a very formal title of the AI coordinator. We're not entirely sure what that even means at this point. So all of us are trying to figure things out as we go. We are having those conversations about what does AI use at the district level look like, and then establishing parameters for student usage. So you could be placed or working in a district right now that's that way, and you could be in a district that's like, we're just waiting for further guidance from either state or federal entities. And so it could be anywhere on that scale or that scope. So just make sure you're finding that out, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where there's a board policy that's been adopted and you are unaware and then potentially unintentionally violating that policy. So just a moment, since it'll be a little harder here. Actually, if you guys are logged in, it looks like we might be able to do this. So based upon your experience and perspective with AI, what is one challenge of integrating AI into educational practice? Anyone drop that in the chat? That would be great if I can figure out my little window keeps popping up and covering part of my thing. So pop your answer into the chat. In just a second, I clicked on something there we go. All right. If anything's coming, oh, there we go. Matching AI wording to actual instruction and wording within our own classrooms. Perfect. Thank you, Mary. Defining acceptable use, Janet. That's a great topic. Very specific, two specific things for sure. We'll pause for just a moment to allow any other options. So Mary and Janet have given some very specific things. Thank you, Colton. Having a higher standard compared to our students. Okay, very good. I love these answers because these are actually more specific than I was looking for or thinking that would be brainstormed, or in the past have been brainstormed as I've done several presentations on AI. One of the things that comes up quite predominantly is cheating. That is something, especially as we work towards more of the secondary level and beyond into post-secondary, the cheating aspect. How do we curb this? How do we create assignments that are AI friendly, or what is the sandbox for AI usage? And then other things, a close second can be that security piece from a data privacy and sharing of information, because we're putting it out here, this content out here, and what are we doing with these language models, and what are the language models in taking our information and potentially having it stored somewhere. So those are primarily the two main areas that we see pop up, but I love your answers. You guys took it above and beyond and very specific. So along the lines of the cheating piece, this is like violating all rules of slide presentation with copious amounts of text here, but this is actually a survey conducted by Stanford's Challenge Success Program. Say that 10 times fast. It's the rate of students engaging in cheating behaviors has remained relatively constant over the years, including after, that's the key word there, after the introduction of AI technologies like ChatGPT. Historically, about 60 to 70% of students have reported some form of cheating, a figure that did not significantly increase with the advent of new tools. So sometimes, and oftentimes when oftentimes when I'm presenting, that is the immediate thing. Well, they're going to cheat. They're going to cheat. They were cheating potentially before. It's just maybe it's a little bit easier, maybe it's a little bit harder to detect at times. But there's not been a significant increase in impact upon the actual cheating. So, and I've linked in or can share with whomever at Missouri Southern the different research pieces and the different places that I pulled that information from. So along the lines and shifting into that plagiarism side of things or that cheating side, this is from Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook. And it just has a scale or a range of what does plagiarism really mean and what does cheating really mean now that we have these tools that are so vastly available. So anywhere from the student wrote all the assignment content without consulting AI in the internet, or student plugged the prompt into AI, copied the response and submitted it to the teacher. So what does, to Janet's question, what does that acceptable use look like? Is there a time and a place for our students to be utilizing different forms, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, whatever would Copilot, whatever form you would like to use? So could it be a nice brainstorm option? Could it be just a peer editing piece? There are different ways that you can utilize it, but we have to be aware of those things and set those parameters, because without said parameters, then that's when the potential rogueness in Wild Wild West will happen. Here's another from attending what do you want to say? More of a workshop, I guess, in Springfield recently. This was disciplinary actions for AI misuse. And this was actually prompted from ChatGPT. So, and when asking what happens if a student is utilizing AI when they shouldn't be, what does that look like? What could that look like? And this walked through from the warning and education, because that's the important piece. We need to teach them why they're in trouble, because if we've set those parameters and we've communicated those parameters, then we also need to share with why they're in violation. And then the parent and guardian notification, the loss of privileges, and then behavioral contracts. I won't read the whole entire slide to you, but this gives you an idea of possible workflow of what that cheating piece looks like if they are actually found to be in violation of whatever terms you've put in for the specific assignment. Another one that's used a lot, that's come up in several of my workshops and different conferences I've attended, is more of this acceptable use type rubric. This starts from a clearly defined no AI use of 0 level, so red, all the way up to the stoplight kind of coloring for a green for full use AI use with human oversight. So what does that look like? The students have that posted. They're able to then go in and say, from the teacher's perspective of this is an AI assisted editing assignment. Clearly defined, clearly communicated, and it's almost works like a rubric of sorts. But I wanted to share that as something that's really starting to take off as districts that are deciding to implement AI, that they have that helps create that sandbox. So this is just kind of the evolution of technology. And as we go through from the printing press in the 1440, airplane, 1927, smartphones to the 1990s, what has come up and ironically been a topic of debate way back hundreds of years ago is this quote from Plato: "If men learn this, it will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written, calling things to remembrance no longer from within themselves, but by means of external marks." And that was actually written as a response, a quote as a response to the concern about storytelling going away and things being written in an actual published text. So this conversation has been happening from our earliest of being all the way to now. It's just each time the technology advances. I remember 10 years ago starting in this role, and 9 years ago we rolled with Chromebooks, and that was going to, at that point in time, one-to-one Chromebooks were the biggest disruptor, or seemed to be the biggest disruptor in education. AI makes Chromebooks look like a walk in the park in terms of that disruption. It is completely balancing the field, reshaping what we need to do in the classroom, because there might have been some teachers between the last several years that were able to still do the same things that they've been doing on a Chromebook that they would have done pencil paper. They might have still been sneaking through. AI is allowing opportunities for us to look at our instructional practices. How are we designing things? And that's what Chuck will get into and speak more to. How are we designing things? Because if we don't want a Googleable answer, then we don't need to ask a Googleable question. So we need to think about those things. How do we get more student autonomy and real world problem solving pieces brought in? How do we bring in those authentic learning opportunities that are less likely and more aligned with what we want to produce for graduates and students in the future? And then also tie into that empathy piece, which is what AI is missing. Like there's never going to be a time when, I shouldn't say never, never is a very absolute. So there's not going to be a time when, you know, the AI has that more empathetic side of things in any time in the near future anyway. We'll hopefully cross our fingers. I have a healthy respect and love of AI, and I also am decently terrified that the robots might revolt. So, you know, it's a balance. We just have to, we have to meet them where we are so we know how to fight back, is what I always say. But I just want to make sure that we are aware of just that big oversight, the conversations that are being had, and what does that look like in the classroom for AI usage, from tutoring and writing reviews to journal analysis, just for collaboration and language, from debating, customized learning paths, gamifying learning, conversation with historical figures, tons of options of AI usage. And I do lots of presentations about that. So I could go on and on. From an AI, just real quick, from a teacher assistant, like the lesson planning, automated grading and feedback, even just drafting emails when you have that difficult parent email or something like that that you're needing to compose and you're just at a loss of words because you're tired at the end of the day, like utilizing this technology for those tasks so it almost becomes your assistant. And so I don't want to dive too far down that rabbit hole because that's not why we're here, but just having that lens and that openness to its possibilities, I think, is where we are now at. Again, referring back to that tug of war, we're long past whether it's here or going to be here or not, and it should be. We have to move past that and put in practices that we can feel good about. So blaming students, what do these things all have in common? Banning ChatGPT or other models, ignoring it, asking, did you write this, in that very confrontational, doubting tone. AI checkers in general. So a nice little meme there, 60% of the time, it works every time. So we need to be very careful as we go down this road of AI. I'm going to specifically just mention AI checkers. Some of them can be kind of reliable. We just have to be really careful that we don't put all of our eggs in that basket because they still can be duped, and that technology is changing so fast that we can't just automatically come at a kid and say, you've been cheating, or I know you did this, or you didn't do this, you used AI. That's a really tricky slope. It loses that culture of community in your classroom, especially if you finds out that the student hasn't. And then you just need to be very careful and not put yourself in precarious situation of having those conversations. Even if saying, did you write this? That leads to a little bit more of a defense. Maybe it's a conversation of, you notice a word that they are not utilizing a lot in their writing. Like I'll use the word copious. That's not a normal vocabulary word that they might be saying. And it's extensively throughout their writing piece. And just walking up to the student and just saying, asking what the definition is, or tell me about the copious amounts of a quote from their paper, and then having them try to explain. Usually you get to the bottom very quickly that this maybe wasn't their work. That's a whole lot different conversation than coming at someone and saying, did you write this? And having that more negative. So moving right along, because I don't want to take Chuck's time. Narrowing the focus will be his section. And my last parting word to you is our role, our responsibility, my plea, if anything, is to help students know how to navigate, help parents know how to navigate, help teachers know how to navigate. So we aren't just riding around and acting like a bunch of jackwagons. we don't teach students, we don't provide them the supports, we don't provide the safe places, then we just have all of this wild, wild west mentality where anything goes. And then we wonder why, and we're frustrated as to what's going on and what's happening. Also, Chuck thought that this actually supposed to say Chuck Wagon as we segued off. So he was a little, he asked if that was supposed to be him driving the wagon, which I had to chuckle. So it was in fact not. It was meant to be, it was meant to be a reference to just how things can get very derailed very quickly. All right, let me stop sharing and I will segue to in just a second. Where are we? Okay, and then you're, which one?
Bottom tab.
There we go, from the beginning. The narration's stellar, is it not? Hang on just a second. Bear with us, guys, as we shift transitions here. All right. I think you are cooking with fire. All right. Next.
All right, outstanding. Thank you so much, Mandy. First of all, I will mention that as somebody who's refereed basketball for the last almost 20 years now, there's almost no slide in a PowerPoint presentation that can offend me, AI created or not. So the objective and kind of the agenda as far as my portion of the presentation is going to be concerning is going to be really taking that philosophical or that conceptual framework that Mandy just went through about the greater discourse and the greater conversation of AI in education at large, and starting to slim that down and frame that down into AI use in the secondary ELA classroom. And I know we've got just a slew of individuals with perhaps a variety of experiences, so please don't feel left out. If you are not a secondary ELA teacher, please do indeed feel free to add your expertise and your experience to the conversation as well. I'll also focus in a little bit on the rhetorical shortcomings of AI, hopefully in an effort to address those or to mitigate those on an as-needed basis. And then our presentation is going to conclude, time pending, with a very short breakout room that asks you to really think about one of the writing assignments you give, and then really afterward think about where it might be either enhanced or where you could curb unwanted AI use. So before we get too awful far, it would be great if you had a copy. And if you're not in a position to where you can get a hold of your writing assignment right now, that's fine. You're more than welcome to just think of it. But if you had a copy or even a digital copy of a writing assignment that you give in your class, again, I know our title is secondary here, but whatever experience you have, feel free to bring that to the table as well. If you're a student teacher or a pre-service teacher, just one that you've seen your cooperating teacher give or get ready to give, or you know will be forthcoming, just having that handy right now at the onset would be of tremendous value for additional conversation a little bit later on. So right now in the chat box, since we're at about the midway mark of our conversation here, it would be really convenient if we could just kind of take the pulse of the room by thinking about a writing assignment that you give, have given, or will give at some point in time. And then if you could please in the chat box, really just inform us or type in the assignment that you either have seen AI used on the most, or you feel is perhaps most susceptible to AI use. Either one is perfectly fine, but an actual writing assignment that you give that you feel either students use AI on a lot, merited, unmerited, wanted, unwanted, it doesn't matter, or you think they may use it. And I'm going to pause for just about 45-ish or so seconds and allow individuals to get their answer in the chat box. Okay, thank you so much, Mary. Informative essays. Absolutely. I know I use narrative as the example here. That'll be the example I come back to a little bit later. Hey, Bruce, thank you so much. When they're supposed to create an original piece or writing in the writing class, they tell me they use AI to come up with the ideas. Interesting point. I'll actually cycle back to that a little bit later in the presentation. Students, as of late, have not been tremendous at brainstorming, which is really a critical skill, as we know, in the writing process, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on. Going to kind of start closing the window here on the chat box. I don't mean to rush people. I find my students trying to submit book report reflections from things they find in AI. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, the research paper, perhaps the bane of everybody's existence in the second semester. I also see this one a lot as well, and we'll come back to that. That will be a key component a little bit later on too. Okay, absolutely. Using knowledge of the short stories you've read this quarter to answer the question, what is the individual's duty to society? So in other words, tying back to a key or to an essential question as well. As we kind of roll on here, just kind of my own role. So from a little bit, as we narrow the conversation to the secondary ELA classroom, my name's Chuck Carpenter. I'm the instructional coach at Neosho High School. I'm also the department chair of English this year at Neosho High School as well. And I'll be the first to speak something that's not anything that's going to be exceptionally groundbreaking. AI has been at the cornerstone of colleagues' conversations and concerns, not only this year, and granted, we're only 4 weeks into this year, but also has been for the better part of about 16 to 18 months. In my other life, I adjunct as an adjunct instructor for a nearby community college online, and I can almost readily assure you that every email we get that's related to professional development is related in some way to AI use in either the research paper or some other capacity. It's a cornerstone of what higher ed folks are talking about right now. I clipped these from some higher ed publications about a week ago. So just to start framing the point in terms of AI use in, well, not only higher ed, but as we'll move on, the secondary classroom as well. You can see that there's no shortage. That came from the Chronicle of Higher Ed. This screen cap came from Inside Higher Ed that has its own AI page. As of the last, again, year and a half to 2-ish or so years, the proliferation of sources and the proliferation of research on AI has obviously necessitated that. I clipped this from Google Scholar about, I don't know, a couple days ago. And even just a very, very rudimentary search, AI and higher ed, as you can see, yielded 7.2 million results. So obviously it's a thing, and it's a thing that's concerning educators, but how do we kind of attack it or approach it and start coming to terms with AI use as English teachers? So as we start thinking about the narrower issue, when, how, where, and why do kids use AI in the ELA classroom? And the first thing that I'll say is that there's a tremendous gap in the literature because the research doesn't say very much yet. If I were a betting individual, I would be willing to wager that the expansion and kind of maneuvering into this gap in the research would start to, once again, become much, much more widespread over the next several years in the foreseeable future as well. So we know kids are using AI. There's just not a lot that's out there that's saying how and why they're using it in the English classroom specifically. On the Inside Higher Ed article from 2023, they sort of piggybacked off of a Chegg study that said about 1/5 of students use AI, and they primarily use it on writing assignments. So what my crux on this is going to be from kind of here moving forward is framing the issue of either unwanted or unrestrained AI use with the shortcomings or limitations that it offers. And let's be honest, there are shortcomings and there are limitations behind AI use. And my objective moving forward here will be to frame the unwanted or the unrestrained AI use within those shortcomings, so then we can address them as educators in the ELA classroom as well. I wanted to start out with a study by Karan and Ngandi from 2023. And what they did was they ran a literature review that kicked up 71 sources, and they defined the parameters of that in their study. And they found 6 specific risks that were widely found in the literature regarding AI. So this was a nice dovetail off of sort of Mandy's piece of the presentation as well. In 84.5% of those 71 sources that met their research criteria, they dealt with this notion of AI failing or having a limitation when it comes to what they themed as accuracy and functional risks. Now, a caveat, these are not going to explain or say why kids are using AI in the secondary classroom and then how we can mitigate it. But what it's going to do is it's going to provide kind of once again, a gap, and we can start filling that gap and addressing it as English teachers. We recognize that AI is very good for these administrative tasks, and I'm going to come to a source here in a minute that'll bolster that, and Mandy hit on that a little bit earlier. But once again, there's not a lot of research that's out there about what it can do from a writing standpoint, other than spit out some very generic and frankly, trite and cliche responses as well. There's another shortcoming in AI-powered assessment systems in that they're able to be duped. And you can see that quote there from page 74 of the Karanan and Gandhi source. Doing superficial things like manipulating sentence structures, sentence length, AI will sometimes give credit, or AI-based assessment systems will sometimes give credit for nonsense. So once again, we recognize that there's still a gap and there's still a shortage in there as well. One theme you'll start to see consistently is that AI will not replace quality teaching, and it certainly will not replace quality teaching in the ELA classroom. And then lastly, but perhaps most importantly, AI still isn't able to consistently reproduce or replicate all of these strong pedagogical writing assignment principles that the WAC Clearinghouse in Colorado State, and we'll come to that here in just a few minutes, has advocated. Like, these 5 pillars are absolutely essential for strong student outcomes in your writing assignments in your class. So once again, just kind of attacking it tangentially, AI has accuracy and AI has functional risks as well. Another study that I wanted to frame this conversation in is from Campbell and Cox, and it was a little bit earlier this year. And what they did was they sort of summarized the concerns of instructors who assign writing. So that may have been English teachers, it may have been history teachers, it could have been theoretically anybody who uses writing as an assessment component in their class. And I'll let you take a peek at those 2 quotes there. But essentially what they do is they attack this notion head on that says AI will not be, once again, replacing strong principles of pedagogy when it comes to teaching as well. So we cannot, and we'll have to come to terms with that as educators, right? We cannot let AI sub us out when it comes to designing quality writing assignments and subsequently engaging students in the writing process. And then lastly, evaluating their progress on those predetermined outcomes. AI can't do that for us. And really, it's incumbent upon us to look at our writing assignments and level them up, so to speak. I'm going to give you a second to just peek at this quote here. This was from a report from the U.S. Department of Education last year. All right, particularly if you would draw your attention to the last couple of sentences. We want students to learn to invent and create innovative approaches. We want AI models that enable progress on open, creative tasks. So I would maintain that writing fits the bill as far as creative, innovative approaches. And then obviously being an open, creative task, it's really on us to lead students to that and to create writing assignments that do meet those 2 key components out of this U.S. Department of Ed study as well. I wanted to share some rhetorical shortcomings. So again, I'm getting to the point as to why students will ultimately gravitate toward AI based upon these research studies that I've referenced so far. These are just from a personal observation from over a decade now of teaching English. So rhetorical shortcomings of AI. AI has trouble replicating, and I'm talking about ChatGPT in this instance specifically, a process or response. The responses are vague or they produce generalities. Hopefully, maybe you've seen this one. There is no discernible voice in AI which as an English teacher makes it very, very easy to see when it's been integrated or to see when AI has been used on a basis where you didn't want it. There's no complexity of thought within the response itself, and I use the word thought there very loosely. The repetition aspect within a response, perhaps you've noticed if you've seen an AI generated response that it will repeat, as Mandy mentioned, key phrases or key words over again. A couple of other dead giveaways on it, just the English nerd in me can't stay away. It uses dashes correctly almost 100% of the time, and it puts commas after introductory subordinate clauses correctly almost 100% of the time. Students don't struggle with that at all. And then lastly, inconsistencies with a response. I'll give you a quick example as to how I've really encountered this as well. I interviewed an individual for my dissertation and had an AI app count the number of times that this person said a keyword or phrase that I was looking to study. And it gave a multitude of responses depending on how I asked the question. So for instance, I'd say, calculate the number of times that participant one said this key word, and it would give an exact number. If I asked it again, it would give a range, even if I phrased it exactly the same. If I approached it from a different angle, it gave something else as well. So in essence, what was supposed to be a time-saving device forced me to go back and count the number of times that person said that keyword or phrase individually. Another shortcoming as far as AI is concerned, this just proves that lack or its occasional inability to replicate a response. If you've seen the ChatGPT Strawberry example as of late, it's been making the rounds on various social media over the last 6 weeks or so. It incorrectly counts the number of R's in the word strawberry. You can see it gets it right the first time and then corrects itself afterward. So once again, there are certainly flaws, all right, in AI use as well. So what does this all have to do with writing, and how does it prompt students to gravitate toward AI? When these shortcomings of AI interact, my crux on it is that it prompts unrestrained and unwanted student use. So in summation, if there's a lack of clarity on the writing assignment, what they're supposed to be doing, if their purpose is unclear, namely the rhetorical situation of the writing assignment's unclear, if the scoring criteria is not clear, or we ourselves haven't fostered the necessary composition or rhetorical skills in the classroom leading up to that final product, right? And teaching those embedded throughout the writing process with no opportunity for students to talk about themselves or no creative outlet, students are going to gravitate toward AI, and they're going to focus their sense-making abilities on how can I get this done as quickly as possible because I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing. So we can use these as essentially a mechanism for mitigating unwanted AI use. So that begs the question then, right? What makes a good writing assignment sheet? The WAC Clearinghouse at Colorado State defines that fairly extensively with these 5 principles that are here. I'm cognizant of time, so I'm not going to read these out loud. I put stars next to the one, and I put my instructional coach on hat here for just a second. I put 2 stars next to these quality pedagogical or quality design principles that sometimes I see new or novice teachers maybe fall into. Namely, they don't necessarily note the rhetorical aspects of the task, which of course is exigence, audience, and purpose. They sometimes fail to break down the task into manageable steps. Guilty as charged on that one. I'm sure that everybody in this chat room or this room can think of a time where they just gave the essay, gave the writing assignment, and said, go, good luck. And then lastly, sometimes a failure to make all elements of the task clear, but of equal importance, scaffold the elements of the task to the desired outcome as well. So with all that in mind, and recognizing that without a clear purpose of the writing assignment, without a clear rhetorical situation, once again, without a creative outlet, quote unquote, without a method or way or clear scoring criteria, how can we sort of reconsider our writing assignments in the secondary ELA classroom to curb unwanted use? So when we don't necessarily want students gravitating toward AI or using it as a support or using it as something else, when we want them engaged in the cognitive work themselves, these are some suggestion based on the Colorado State source, and then also personal experience that may be valuable for you as well. And the first thing is defining what success criteria and outcomes look like on each mode of writing that you give. And the success criteria and the outcomes are going to be different. Somebody mentioned the synthesis or the research paper earlier, and there was also a reference to the narrative. The success criteria on the outcomes on each of those are going to look vastly different. One thing that I found that's helpful is not necessarily telling them what to write about, but tell them what a proficient draft looks like and will do. And that will go a long way to mitigating the sense of ambiguity and stopping that sense of unclarity, which will compel them to go out and find an AI app that will do the majority of the work for them. Another thing that I really promote, I really encourage it, and I've done this at all levels, ranging from 9-12, and I do it in the English 101 and 102 course that I adjunct as well, is establishing the rhetorical situation with the students. This came from Right Tools some years back, and it's called the TAC method, topic, audience, and keywords. Working that out on your writing assignment with the students collectively together helps establish that rhetorical situation early, so everybody knows what they're supposed to be writing about, although you're going to have kids writing about vastly different topics, things, experiences, whatever the case might be. So it's all about mitigating, once again, that ambiguity to where students know what the parameters and they know what the sandbox happens to be. Now they can go fish around at any point in there. And I'll show you an example of that here in just a second. Another question to consider, do your writing assignments cover basic logistics? So length, due date, major steps in the writing process, checkpoints, constraints. Do you have some sort of rubric, like Mandy mentioned earlier, about whether AI use is acceptable to a minor degree, to a large degree, to no degree? Clarifying those logistic pieces, once again, focuses our attention on the writing and the writing process at hand, rather than, well, she didn't say I can't, so I guess it means all bets are off and I can. This is especially true for those writing assignments that are multifaceted or multi-step, which is, well, almost all of them. Another suggestion, scaffolding pre-writing with students. As I mentioned earlier, students are not great at brainstorming lately. So modeling what brainstorming methods and what brainstorming mechanisms have worked well for you as the instructor, as a writer, is extremely valuable to them. I mentioned this point about dummy prompts, and once again, I know we're running out of time here, so I'll be a little bit more expeditious. Dummy prompts are essentially prompts that ask for the same mode or ask for the same task, but it's not using the prompt that you plan to give. Otherwise, you're going to get 30 instances of that exact same dummy prompt, and they're all going to write to that one. And you can view the research rationale there on their own. This is an example of a writing assignment I actually give in my own class. It's an English 101 class. I would like at some point perhaps to think that it does adhere to these 5 principles. I will readily say it came from a lot of trial and error. If we had more time, I'd love to break this apart using the TAC method with each of you as well. I fear that with about 2 minutes left, we're not going to have time to get into the breakout. That's okay. This is just something for you to consider and something for you to take away from this presentation, and perhaps spark or catalyze a reassessment of the writing assignments that you do give right now. Consider where your writing assignments have opportunities to incorporate AI, where they are AI proof, and then is your writing assignment, and give it an honest look over, right, and an honest assessment. Is your writing assignment vulnerable or susceptible to AI use because it perhaps may not uphold one of those WAC clearinghouse 5 principles of a good writing assignment? And then lastly, just continue to reflect and continue to think about your successes and concerns in your own classrooms, English, history, otherwise. Again, I know we have a range of individuals here, but really it's about upholding those 5 principles. And once again, forcing students away from the ambiguity and to clarity, objective, purpose, and a clear sense of what the writing process looks like in your classroom. All right, I think we are good with a minute to spare.
My gosh, I really enjoyed both of your presentations. Thank you so much for what you have shared with us today. I'm wondering if we have a few minutes, I guess, between sessions. So I guess I would say, does anybody have any questions that they would like to bring up at this point?
It's that awkward wait time on Zoom. Is it appropriate to wait, or are they just not, do they not have questions?
Exactly. Would it be possible to go back to the contact information slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know oftentimes I attend sessions and walk away and it's rolling around in my head, and then I'm like, oh, I should have asked about this.
And you should see it right now.
There we go. Sometimes.
There we go. Okay, terrific. Well, I thank you all very much for your time and the effort that you put into this presentation, and I really appreciate all that attended today. And I'm 100% positive we have all walked away with something in our brains and some thoughts in terms of where to go next and what to think about. And I, again, appreciate you and thank you, and hope that you have a wonderful afternoon.
Right. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And appreciate Dr. Craig's invitation to share some ideas with you guys today.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Yeah, have a
Thank
good
you.
afternoon.
Okay, you too.